Hello, welcome to another episode of A Podcast. Your host, Stephen Maxted. And today we have Shawn and Rachel with Soul Survivor Body Art. And excited to have you on. We were just chatting before here. This is a space I am least familiar with. But nonetheless, we have some amazing guests on here that are in some super unique businesses. And I'm excited to chat today a little bit more about how you manage your business and just kind of like the popularity of, I'll call it body art. And however how we can learn some things on today's podcast about tattoos and other customizations, I guess we'll say, piercings and whatnot that you offer through your business. And so pumped to have you on. Thanks for making time from your schedules.
Thanks so much. Yeah, took us a little bit to find our date, but I'm glad that we did. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, likewise. And maybe we'll start off with what got you started. I know we were just talking, and we'll speak on kind of the years in history and business, but what got things started in this space, and how was that? Because it was 24 years ago, we were saying, which is incredible. In terms of stats, like just point blank, like the odds of your business lasting that long in any industry is quite remarkable. Most businesses don't make it past year one. And then there's some other stats about year 3 and year 9 that I've heard out there. So to be in business for 24 years is awesome. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Soul Survivors opened its doors in 2001. Shawn and I actually weren't here for the opening. My husband, Eric Johanson, opened it. And I met Eric in 2002. And so,
cool.
I've been a part of it a little bit later on, a year or two later. And what year did you join?
2011, June of 2011, I came.
So, yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So it's been quite a journey. We've always been in the same location. So we've always been in the heart of Osborne Village. And, it's definitely been a feat to be in business this long, but we have like such an amazing community of people. Like there are people, Shawn was just saying that like somebody who he hasn't seen since 2015 as a client is messaging him to come back and see him. So there's like long community building that we've been doing for quite some time.
That's awesome. And you know what, I'm not surprised to hear that because, over life's journey, and then maybe we'll talk about, some things to do with like, how do people really get started on, their tattoo journey if someone's curious about even starting them. But, once you start, it seems like it's something that people often, it's a little bit addictive, or it becomes a pattern, a lifestyle. It becomes this whole thing. It's from friends that I've, witnessed over the years. A good friend of mine, actually also named Shawn, spelled differently, comes to mind, where he's just continued to update and add to himself, and it's like telling a story on his body, and it's really neat to see. But how do folks get started? When they're coming to you guys for the first tattoo, what does that look like for your end of the desk, as it were?
Usually, someone who's getting started with their first tattoo, it's usually to mark a very specific event. As whether it's a passing of a loved one or, a goal that they've achieved. And usually because they're nervous about the process. So they want it to be very important, and it's very they're very excited about the whole thing, and they're not sure about getting more and more tattoos. And then as you guide them through the process and they realize that it's truly something they're giving themselves as much as acquiring. And that's the addictive part. That's where they get into this. Well, it doesn't maybe need to be so thought out, but it's a small gift you can give yourself. There's an entire process of getting the tattoo. Like a lot of people enjoy the adrenaline rush of the experience, or the care and the connection that they make with the artist, or the journey of the art. So it gets to be a multifaceted thing.
Can you bring up a good point? Some accounts that I follow and lightly creep online are different artists. It's just funny things. Like I've seen this one artist, and you may be way more familiar with this than I am, but they like don't take their, maybe kind of like, I'll say pen, I might have that wrong, or needle like off of the person. It's like a continual thing. Yeah. I guess it's drawn up that way. Is that right? Yeah. And it's a certain style of tattoo. It's and I guess that is very true, right? Between different artists, you may find an artist that you want to do a certain style, and that's kind of like, okay, this is my person, or this is the style of tattoo that I want. I'm going to go to this specific want or need there in terms of that. And then I guess from there, people do mix and match as well. So it's not always just one look. And how does that work within the business itself? Do you have certain almost kind of like categories of folks that do different art styles?
Yeah, like our artists here, we all have our own specialty. We all kind of focus in one particular direction that we would really love to just work in. But we're all very versatile. We can do a lot of other styles, but if given a choice, we would do this style. But it's nice because then as tattoo education in the community comes up, people realize that there's the old stigma of you went to one guy forever and that's the only guy you ever saw. It's kind of gone away. Now people are smart enough that they'll go and get this particular strength from this guy and that his strength from that guy. And there's no jealousy from artist to artist anymore like there used to be 25 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that there's also sometimes people actually form a connection or form a relationship with the artist and then open up to that artist's particular style. Absolutely. And it may not have been something that they were open to, but you know, they like love Shawn. So, and they want to like explore his art. So there's that facet as well. I also really feel that I feel like we're in a spiritual wasteland or void in this culture. And I think that there's like tattooing is very much a rite of passage. I think that's why, you know, sometimes when individuals turn 18, there's like this desire to claim and begin the passage of adulthood. And there's not really something set up within communities in order to mark that time. And so I think a lot of younger generations that are turning 18 kind of use this as a rite of passage for themselves to sort of like claim this kind of sovereignty. That's just a thought as well. You see this a lot.
It used to very much about rebellion, and now it's more about claiming your power. It's more about self-expression. It's more about doing the things that you wanted to do or expressing your way in a way that no one can take from you. It's yours forever. It's yours as long as you're on this planet or on this existence and plane.
Agreed.
So it's quite interesting to see the journey of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I feel like things always change over time, right? There's different like styles, and I'll just kind of maybe comment and then definitely throw it back to you guys. But you know, there used to be like the barbed wire on the bicep and you know, different locations of the body, maybe a lower back. I believe there's some specific names for that. And then over time, I remember there was some guys I grew up with, and shout out to my buddies. And sorry, I'm going to pick on you for a sec, but across their back, they had like their last names through like the kind of the hockey kind of like name badge era. And I think that they're making some choices to like update or, you know, kind of, yeah, I'll say update those tattoos. And it's just really neat to see how skilled folks can turn an existing tattoo into something else in the future that may not be on as trendy anymore. Maybe those trends come full circle again, but I'm sure you have a lot of business from situations like that, right? Where people do get them young and they were meaningful then, but now their life's changed and they want something different.
Yeah, I mean, I would venture a guess that 40% of the tattoos I do in a year are cover-ups or repair work.
Yeah,
it's kind of special in that area, and but yeah, and most often it's not about like a cover-up. Usually isn't about regret as much as it's about I'm not that person anymore. I've grown, whether it's spiritually or emotionally, or my relationship has changed, or you know, through education and self-exploration, they've realized that they don't have that opinion they once had, and so they've shifted. So it's a real journey. Like as people get educated on themselves and tattooing, they'll change their tastes, right?
I think that's such a poetic way to talk about even just like modern day, and like people can change opinions and our ability to learn and maybe adjust over time. I think that's very cool. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know? We do.
Well,
we do change.
We're in a time where, you know, gender and identity expression is very important to people because it's been suppressed for so long, and now they have more freedom to explore that and be who they've always truly felt they were. Eric, who established this business, Rachel's husband, told a story about getting a tattoo when he was a young man. He got a tattoo in a very visible place, and his mom wasn't comfortable with it. And he said probably the most profound thing I've ever heard from that. And he said to her that to him, the tattoo was always there. He just made it visible for her, which I always thought was a really interesting expression. And for most people, that's kind of the way they feel.
I think that briefly interrupted, not by a commercial break. There's a doodle break. There's you're totally right, because there used to be a kind of a stigma, as we'll just call it what it is, years ago, of having tattoos in general, and if they were in visible places. I remember my grandfather had a tattoo since passed, but and he was in the Air Force, and I believe that it was like they got as like young men, very young, probably not legal age is one of my guesses as well. They were probably under the age of 18 when getting them, and he was always kind of embarrassed about it. And I think it was a kind of a cultural thing back then, and now it's much more accepted. Yeah, even in the corporate world, it used to be kind of frowned upon, like if it was anything visible, above like kind of t-shirt or even like shorts and stuff. There was a bit of a thing, and now that's completely changed, and it's very acceptable to have tattoos and tattoos showing on your skin as the expression, like you were talking before. But I'm sure there's been lots of change over the last 24 years, as we were talking about. But what would be some other things that you've seen in the business shift over that time?
So like shifts in the industry, shifts in the business in the last.
Yeah, I guess like any and all of the above. I'm sure that there's been like
one of the biggest things is the client age. Like 5-10 years ago, even 20 years ago, most of your clients would be that 18 to 25. That was the bulk of your clients. I would say the bulk of your clients now are that 35 to 50, that range of people that are just close enough, or Gen X enough, that it was kind of still taboo and forbidden in their teenage years. And now they're like, I'm going to do this because it's okay. And they're really exploring that and kind of turning themselves loose. I mean, you still get a ton of younger clients. You still get, 18 to, you still get lots of that. But I would probably say half of your business is the people that were my age. I'm 50 years old, that kind of missed that trend when they were younger. So.
Interesting. And they're kind of playing like catch up. And is that from the standpoint of like first tattoo now?
Yeah.
Is an older age demographic?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I did a tattoo on a woman 4 years ago. It was her first tattoo. She was 63 years old.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Now that you mention it, I think that is kind of a thing that I've even witnessed to some degree. I mean, I'm not sight unseen with on application, but I've seen more folks that are a little bit more along the journey, as it were, and they're living some form of, I guess, youthfulness, or just kind of starting to express they've gone through maybe a life thing, and they want to celebrate it ultimately.
I agree. I also think that there's this conditioning in society in a certain generation, probably in the age bracket that Shawn is speaking of, where like everyone in society, like we're so domesticated. And so we do things in a way to conform and fit in. And then when we reach a point that there's acceptance there and we feel like we can go for it and like maybe embrace our wildness a little bit, sometimes there's people that jump fully into that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Are in like a more mature age bracket and like are getting sleeves, and you're like, all right, like let's do this. So I think there's that component as well. At least for me, that's a perception that I have of it.
But I think I think that carries over to piercing as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see a lot of that, 30-something crowd that's really, really exploring the piercing journey as well.
Yeah. And do it like when they get a divorce, right? I see, like they wanted to do something. They're like, I'm doing this. I think
reinventing themselves.
I think there's that like, it's piercing has that kind of like immediate release for people as well. Yeah. But I guess something that I've seen too, you've talked about, like how when you're in business for a long time, you do see trends go full circle. Like back in the early 2000s, there would be so many people that had really large stretched ears that would wear, like we would carry like really large gauge tunnels. And then sort of went away and people started like going to see plastic surgeons to sew their ears, right? Don't have the proper term for that. So,
that's right.
But, and now we're seeing kind of like a resurgence of people beginning to stretch their ears again into larger gauges. And like, I'm even seeing more people come in with that. And that's cool for me to see, when you see that go full circle, there is like, an acknowledgement of time that comes with that. So
right, there was like a 1.0 version. Now we're circling back.
Yeah.
Not the same industry. I saw this funny post the other day around like sunken living rooms and stuff, and bringing them back from like, I guess like a 70s or 80s style things, but just sticks in my mind. I was seeing that and I was like, oh, that's cool. I hope that comes back. That's a neat layout of a house.
Yeah,
kind of thing. And that, just reminiscing on what you're saying there about piercings. And it's interesting that you see that after a certain change in marital status, whatever the reason may be, to go get a piercing, or I'm assuming that as well, getting a tattoo, because maybe it's something that they put off and show like kind of a change in where things are going.
Like piercing is a very affordable venture, right? Like the makeup industry is recession proof because most makeup is relatively inexpensive, right? And it's something that you can do in the now that makes you feel better immediately. Something you're doing for yourself. And piercing and smaller tattoos all fall into that category where it's something that you can give yourself that makes you feel better or makes you feel like you're creating change in your environment or yourself. And then, people, once they explore that, get really into that idea of the, the resurgence of oneself or the reinventing of oneself, right? So it becomes really cool.
Yeah. Interesting. Wait, in terms of tattoos, is there any patterns that you find? This might be such a basic question from a guy without any. Is there a specific part of the body that people gravitate to go get their first tattoo?
Not in general. No, it's really a personal expression. And some people want to get a tattoo just for getting the tattoo, and they're not really sure where to put it. And you kind of explain to them, like, well, then I try and guide them, like, so how often do you want to see it? How easily do you want to be able to show it to others? And then you kind of explore what the best place to put it that kind of fits all the criteria for them.
Interesting. And in terms of, I know it's something that I always bring up. Maybe for someone who doesn't have tattoos or someone who has some, they're going to be well versed in this. But in terms of like pain, how do we manage that in terms on ink day, and or where are more sensitive areas on the body that you experience in giving tattoos?
There's this myth about tattoos hurting more over the bone, which is a myth because you're not even breaking all 5 layers of skin. Like it's so superficial as far as your tissues concerned. It is not that thing. So it's about skin sensitivity. So it's areas of the body that are the most protected. So like your inner bicep or your rib cage or your inner thighs or back of your knees will hurt way more than the outside because your clothes are abrasing on them. You're bumping into things. It's just more used to that stimulus, right? So it's more about that. I mean, there's exceptions to the rule. Your hands and your feet have more nerve endings than the rest of your body for your tactile sense of touch. They tend to be a little more, your neck, your face, those kinds of things kind of be higher up on the pain scale. But there are a few places we won't mention that will be kind of off the pain scale. You don't want to really go through that. But, those are the things. But in general, it's about skin sensitivity. And then the problem with saying, well, this place is going to hurt the most is it varies from person to person. How sensitive are they to pain? What kind of pain have they experienced over their lifetime? Like an 18-year-old that's had a, good for them, a graced life where they haven't really experienced any pain will find all of it rather difficult. But someone in their 40s that's, been in a car crash or broken a leg or done this or had a child and has had real pain in their life finds all of it fairly easy. So it's based on experience as well. So
interesting. Yeah, I mean, that totally makes sense. And I'm glad between men and women, this is often like a thing online of, who's tougher, whatever. Do you see a pain tolerance difference specifically between the two? And
in general, women do much better.
I would agree.
The tattoo process.
I was going to think that too. Yeah.
There are a couple of variables on that. And and the reason is that societal idea of men have to be tough. Mm-hmm. So when you're getting a tattoo, and what happens is you're expecting a lot of pain, a lot of input, a lot of problems. So you get nervous, and your body creates a lot of adrenaline, and then there's very little physical pain, right? So then you have all this adrenaline, nowhere for it to go. So people sometimes will get lightheaded, or they'll pass out, or they'll feel weird. Where a man in that situation will clam up, shut his mouth, and eventually pass out, which is one person out of every 1,000 you might see. It's pretty rare.
Right.
A woman, the minute she starts to feel funny, will tell you immediately. They're more expressive about mitigating that pain too. Like, one, they have a higher pain tolerance, but also if they are experiencing any level of real discomfort, they're going to tell you right away.
Right.
So better at the whole process in general than men.
Understood.
I also think that, you know, sometimes I feel like as a society, we are hyper focused on avoiding pain. We don't want to be uncomfortable. We carry supercomputers in our pocket. We feel even a slight discomfort, we can go on our phone and kind of numb out to that. So I think there's this real anxiety that exists about experiencing pain. And really, I try to tell people too, I'm like, try not to think about it as pain, but as intensity. So a big part of it too, in my opinion, is our mindset about it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think everyone, especially Shawn, because he's been doing it for a million years, is really good at sort of like explaining those parameters and sort of helping to elevate the client to a higher mindset where they can really manage that for themselves and kind of change their perception. I've seen him do it many times.
Yeah.
For people who are having a hard time, and I'm like, oh, I don't need to help here. But that's also something that I've noticed. It's not like 20 years ago when people were better with pain. I feel like we live in an age now where we don't have to be uncomfortable. We push pain away.
Have you ever heard the expression the runner's high? So someone will run, they experience like they're pushing their body to that ultimate limit, and will eventually experience like a small form of euphoria to where they get addicted to that feeling. Tattooing is the same way. If you can embrace it, your body will produce its own natural adrenaline and natural endorphins, and people get to a point where they actually really enjoy the process as well. Like it is a rite of passage you're going through. You're experiencing something you'll never get anywhere else. And you're left with this permanent reminder, which is also the whole point of the journey, right? So when you can help people relax and understand that all of what their experience is completely normal, and if they can settle into it, they'll get more of that euphoric feeling and less of that intensity. And then it usually is pretty easy.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard folks mention that before. Can be addictive. And oddly enough, the guest I had on before was a runner. We got talking about endurance. So it's kind of funny you bring that up. Yeah, as a comparison.
It's the act of doing something that you know is going to suck, but you're going to do it anyway. And then you get to a point where it's enjoyable. It's like discipline. Discipline is the act of doing something you hate like you love it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like a thing in society, like the hero's journey. You know, we all have to go to that edge. We all have to cross the threshold. And there's like a physical discomfort that is included in that threshold. And if you are daring enough to push yourself to that, it can be very rewarding for your psyche after, in my opinion. Yeah. Or something like that. I don't know if I explain that the way I mean it, but
you can brag to everyone that you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know what? No, I totally feel that way. Like, it's kind of like, hey, mad respect me. You have like these, I'll call them gnarly looking tattoo. Like, it's like a big art piece, and you're like, you know, because there's that, like the assumption that it is going to, like, you know, take time, and it's, you know, you've invested time, energy. Actually, what funny, another good friend of mine, shout out to John. He's been adding to himself over the years and stuff, and he's got a specific artist he goes and sees. He's maybe been there too. I won't falsely state this. Anyways, he's got like a bunch of stuff, and for him, it's just continually sharing that story. And I've seen him, I'm like, dang, John, like that's a lot of ink, man. Good for you. There's kind of the association to pain, but
it's surprising when you see some of these people. Like, you wouldn't. I've had people in here getting tattooed that you would have no idea that they have the level of tattoos they have, because they're still quote unquote invisible in society when they're in there every day, and then they have a lot of ink, and you're like, well, it's kind of neat to watch.
Yeah, it is really cool. What's I guess, like, in terms of maybe let's talk like a couple of things. Oh my gosh, my mind's spinning now. This is such a cool topic. I think years ago, in terms of like maybe like a little bit of like a stigma, and I know protocols have kind of like improved and stuff, but in terms of like kind of in the line of medical safety and things that you follow nowadays to give people some comfort in the space if they're new to it, what kind of standards are followed nowadays in terms of cleaning equipment and needles and everything to do with that?
Well, I mean, you're taking universal precautions. So we're we're on par with your doctor's office or, you know, any kind of hospital for sure. You know,
Yeah.
using the ultimate in cleanliness, there's no room for shortcuts in our industry because there's too many inherent risks.
100%.
But I mean, you're using the best quality material. You're single use everything, and everything that's reused has to be able to be steam sterilized and repackaged on site. Like there's no room for shortcuts.
Oh, I love to hear that. And part of it was behind you guys there without having to look, but there you have the safe, I guess, deposit for the other ends and needles and stuff right there. So I'm just thinking that this is kind of more like medical level in terms of what the expectation is. So
you know, we were inspected by the health board regularly. You do monthly sport tests, you know, so everything's you know, maintained at the highest standard, right?
Yeah,
we experienced that during COVID when they had all their COVID protocols. They wanted to send an inspector down to make sure we were doing everything right, and they come down and they're like, well, you should be doing this, and we're like, well, that standard's great for cleaning your food handling, but we're operating here, so we're doing this. And they're like, oh, like you like we're not gonna operate down here. We're gonna do what we do already, which is way higher than you require.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Well, what do you find a certain season of the year is busier than others for folks coming in to get
there's two real groups of clients. So we're steady all year because we've been around a long time and we've been established. But there are really two camps of tattoo collectors. So there's the collectors that around this time of year after New Year's, they decide, I want to have a new sleeve for summer and I want to be able to show it off. So they come and they plan that over the course of the winter and the fall, where it's the best time to get tattooed because you're not sun exposure, it's healing the best, right? And then you have the people that come, you know, July 1st weekend and they want a tattoo because they want to go home that weekend and show it off. And both of those are valid expressions. Neither is correct or incorrect, but you have the people that want something now, and they're tend to get tattooed the most when the least amount of clothing is being worn. And then you have what we call the real serious collectors, like Sleeve-tober, where September comes along, and people start planning for sleeves and back pieces and whole legs, and then they're getting tattooed slowly for fall and winter. And when summer comes, they're already healed, ready to go, right?
Interesting. That is so fascinating and awesome. Called it Sleeve-October or Sleeve-tober. What is the healing process look like? Again, coming from this pretty new to
the tattoo's going to take 4 to 10 days to heal on the surface and 2 to 3 weeks to heal kind of, you know, in the sub layers. So from the time you're getting the tattoo tool, it's what we consider completely healed is usually 4-ish weeks, maybe 6, depending on the healing, how far around extremity it is, and then also factors like, you know, diabetes or any healing conditions that will slow things down. But in general, like the tattoo's healed on the surface to the touch in less than 2 weeks.
Very awesome. And we'll call it everyday maintenance. What is the suggested or what's the most recommended in terms of keeping that tattoo looking the freshest? Because I hear the sun's not good for it.
You do to keep your tattoos looking fresh.
What do I do? All of the wrong things. I do everything you're supposed to. I don't do any of that stuff. It's just because it's like, why doesn't the mechanic take care of his own car? Because he doesn't. So the best care for the tattoo, like after it's fresh, depending on the bandage they use, whether if they use a second skin product, you're going to leave that on for an extended period, usually 4 to 5 days. You take that off, the tattoo's basically healed to the surface. You're keeping it clean and dry. You're putting moisturizer on once a day. But as far as long-term care, limiting sun exposure is the most important.
Yeah.
Like, if you want your tattoo to have real longevity, you don't want to be a sunbather all the time, or at least using sunscreen. It's more, you know, it's safer. And in the melanoma seasons that we live in now, you kind of want to do that anyway. But and tattoo pigment technology has come so far in the last 20 years that it's better than it ever has been, right? But you still want to take care of it. It's like a nice car, you know. You want to keep sure your car is clean and waxed and it's the best it can be in the sun. Your tattoo's the same way. Yeah,
absolutely. Maybe more of a personal inquiry. What were your first tattoos?
My first tattoos on my chest, done when I was 17. I lied to the guy about my age and got it done. I went to my parents and asked them to sign a form, and they wouldn't. But I already had the appointment book, so I just went, and I knew the guy, and he did it for me anyway. He didn't realize I was underage. But it's an eagle head. It's on my chest. I still have it.
Cool.
So it's a 17.
Cool.
Awesome.
I got a spider web on my elbow. So that was like, that was my first tattoo.
Okay, and that's to your point we were talking about, or a little bit before, about like pain tolerance areas. My guess before coming into that is that one would have been a little sensitive. Is that the case?
Like it. No, I don't find it uncomfortable there.
I didn't find the elbows that bad.
Maybe people don't. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was okay.
The thing with an elbow is the tattoo is larger than people expect because
of the move.
Well, because when your elbow's here, you draw a circle in your elbow, right? And then when you bend it, it almost doubles in size, and that's the way when you're tattooing it, right? Because you need the skin to be stretched as taut as possible. So a tattoo that looks this big when your arm is down is this big when your arm is bent, right? Because it's stretched. Like your lower back is the same way, your knees are the same way because there's so much bend in that tissue. So people underestimate the size of the tattoo sometimes when they're getting it.
Okay, that's something I hadn't considered in the tattoo space. Are there other things like that in tattooing that come to mind when thinking about the size and that decision? Different colors, perhaps, or are there different things like within colors of ink that affect different things when tattooing at all?
I think that there's always like unexpected things. Like very often people sometimes come in and they would like to get something, and it can be, what I experience is like most often it's commonly like lettering or words that they want very condensed. And I don't think that they necessarily understand that, this is a living canvas. It's not a piece of paper. And so as your body changes, your tattoos change as well. And pigment that sits inside the skin as we mature can expand. And so it's not always feasible to do things at a certain size. And it may look good on paper, but it doesn't necessarily translate to the body.
Yeah, like if you put a line in the skin and it's 1 millimeter wide, in 5 years that 1 millimeter line could be 3 millimeters wide. So when you're doing lettering in a certain size, small letters like your E's or your A's will close, or the spacing between letters, if you're trying to do them too small, will close and they'll touch and become a big blur. So there's a limitation to how small you're going to do some stuff because what we would explain it as, well, this is going to collapse over time, right? Like I wouldn't want to do a happy face on you that's the size of the end of a pin because it's going to be a dot in a couple years. And it's weird because as a client, when you don't understand, it feels predatory. It's just like we're trying to talk you into a larger tattoo to charge you more money. And we're trying to talk you into a tattoo that's going to last you your lifetime.
Yeah.
Because for two reasons. One, we want you to be happy, but also my name's attached to that tattoo. So if I do this tattoo for you and in 10 years it looks like complete garbage, or 5 years it looks like complete garbage, you're not happy and I'm not happy. And you're still telling everyone that I did it. Right. So there's some ego in it too. But you try and give that as the last space, but you ultimately want what's best for the client.
Yeah. And you know what? It's funny. And now I'm thinking back, and there wasn't an example top of mind before, but I have seen some folks with tattoos that kind of look like it's almost like blurred, or like it's like taking an eraser to pen on a piece of paper, kind of just smudges it, kind of thing is what it looks like. And I'm sure that's the exact reason why.
Well, and we kept understanding the mechanics of how the pigment's in the skin. So when you're injecting the pigment into the skin, that's going in, and your lymphatic system thinks it's a foreign body and it wants to eat it. So basically it wants to chew it up and then spit it out through waste, through your waste in your body, whether it's, your feces or whatever, and it gets out that way. Yeah. But what happens is the pigment molecule is too large. So the lymphatic system encapsulates it, and that's what keeps it there. But imagine a big dot with a little Pac-Man that's always chewing on it. And that's why the tattoos get fuzzy on the edge over time, is why tattoos slowly fade over time, because even though it's there and it's too big to eat all in one chunk, you get enough piranhas, they'll eat that elephant over time, right? So it's that same idea. So it's and then there's all kinds of factors to why it does that. But yeah.
Interesting. I am pumped. We just went full science on this. I was not expecting that in today's episode, by no means in a positive or negative way. I just then yeah, that's super cool.
I've always wanted to be able to educate the client. If I can't
Yeah.
explain to you why it does this, then maybe I'm the wrong person to see. You know, like if your contractor said you can't build this deck because the hot tub's going to be too heavy, and you said why, and he goes, I don't know, you wouldn't trust his opinion.
Yes.
And I think that your tattooer should be educated on why he's helping you make these decisions, as opposed to how thick is my wallet at the end of the day, right? So
right. Yeah, you know, it's trying to think of the quote around this. It's not coming to mind. Just around like people that are like the best at what they do, and obviously like it sounds like you're functioning at that level in terms of being able to explain everything in pretty well depth, and you know, brings up an interesting simple question. How many tattoos have you, or are you both artists, by the way? I don't know if you even covered this before. I assume that you are to some level, or have tattoos anyways, but how many tattoos have you done on the journey?
Well, I've been tattooing for almost 24 years, I guess, 24 years. So
Yep.
you average, working month, you're working 23 days, 3 tattoos a day on average. What's that?
Trying to grab a calculator. Hold on.
Yeah. What's 3 times 23? Is how many?
69.
Times
828.
Okay, now times that by 24.
Okay, so about almost 20,000. It's
That's
like
a rough estimate of the tattoos I've done in my career.
wow, that's crazy.
You
Cool.
know, and it would vary because like some days you'll do 4 or 5 small tattoos. One day you'll do 1 big tattoo.
Right.
So 3 is kind of an average. So you're looking at somewhere between 10 and 15,000 or 20,000 tattoos in the last 20 years.
That's wild. How many people do you think that it accumulates up to? Because probably a few less people probably did multiple tattoos on some folks on their journey.
Yeah, I would imagine I've seen more than 10,000 clients over my career.
I would guess.
That's so crazy. How does that feel as the artist? That's pretty neat.
It's pretty incredible because you become a pretty important part of people's lives. Like, and
Yeah.
if you can treat your clients with respect and care, and they grow a real attachment to you. I have clients where I've tattooed their whole family. Like,
Yeah.
I have a gentleman I started tattooing about 10 years ago. And since then I've tattooed his son, his daughter, his mother-in-law, his ex-wife, you end up with a whole myriad of people. I have another client who I've tattooed him and his wife and his 2 daughters. And they start getting referred to their friends, and you get kind of really attached. It's super interesting, and it's neat because you form real lasting relationships with these people over time. Like I said, I'm experiencing a big trend now that I'm seeing clients that I haven't seen since pre-COVID. You haven't seen them for 4 or 5 years, and all of a sudden they're back in the game again, and it's really neat.
And it's like a way that you see sort of like even like communities build. Like when you're tattooing a whole family, there are times that you encounter like, individual family members, and like, you ask about their parents or whatnot, and they've all been in the studio. And it's just like a nice little thing. Like I even bought something on Facebook Marketplace, and it was a client of Shawn's. Like no idea. And then seeing her, and she's dropping off the item. I'm like, hey, how's your dad? And like, okay, we'll see you at the tattoo show. And it's this really nice kind of web that you weave, and it's this beautiful interconnectedness. And like one of the most important things to everyone that works here, it's definitely part of like the mission of Soul Survivors is that connectedness that we experience. Like every tattoo to us is exciting, even if it's something that maybe we're like, oh, I don't know, that's pretty small or whatever this is, like in terms of doability. But it's just so exciting. Like even after 24 years, I honestly, reading client emails, I feel so excited. I'm like, oh my God, they're choosing us. It's like such a thrilling thing, and I don't take it for granted. We don't take it for granted. It's just, there's just a lot of gratitude for being able to do what we do, and for the people that make it possible, and for the community that sort of begins to exponentialize, right?
Well, there's no thing as an insignificant tattoo to the person getting it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you have to honor that. Like, and if you can't put all of you into a tattoo, regardless of how big or small it is, then the client feels that. And I agree. And no matter no matter how well executed the tattoo is, if you can make a connection to that person, they might not come back. Because if there are a ton of talented tattoo artists in the world, and there's a lot of choice, and people are more educated on tattoos than they ever were, which is great. But they're also looking for more than just the tattoo. They want to find that person they share common ground with, a connection to, or they feel heard and safe and trusted, and and you build a real connection to someone, and you're going to see them time and time again. You're going to see their mom, you're going to see their sister, you're going to see
and the podcast host.
Yeah. Yes, I love it. Manifesting. Yeah. Planting the seed. Yeah. Oh gosh.
It's like an experience, because even like circling back to what we talked about at the beginning, it is a rite of passage. And so, just even like the environment, like I'm sitting in Shawn's room, and like you can only see our lens right now, but like it's a work of art, and even walking in and like, you look around and you're fascinated by some of the things that you see that feeds you in some way. And so there's like a whole experience that's important in what we do, and we don't take it lightly. We take a lot of pride in,
and we try and create a space that reflects who we are, but also is not it's not any one thing. Like you wouldn't be able to walk into our shop and look around and be like, everyone who works here is in death metal and they do this and they do that. You would walk into our shop and be like, there must be 1,000 people to work there, because there is so many varied pieces of art, pieces of experience or expression, because we've curated a space that makes everyone, regardless of how old or young, feel safe and welcome, right? It doesn't matter gender, sexual identity. That is not important. As long as you feel safe and welcome, we want you here, right?
Yeah.
And it's worked for us for this long.
Very cool. And we started following, I guess, each other on the wonderful world of social media, connected there. And I know you guys have been doing a great job at sharing more of your story. Just by nature of the job and some of the stuff that I do, I'm not always, full disclosure, not reading everything, but I'm usually liking and giving some love out. And I love how you have started to really like enhance and share more of that story. It feels like I've actually been in the location, although I haven't. I've been by. There's been bars I frequented in my early 20s nearby. So I'm very familiar with the location. But in terms of being in there, it definitely feels like, hey, like I've already kind of been in here before. There's, not as much or any anxiety about like, oh, okay, I kind of know my way around. This location from what you've been sharing. So I think like kudos to the team who's ever working that, everyone ultimately about like sharing, the intended experience ahead of time and what folks can, walk into and expect there. So really great job.
Well, and if you can build that image and that online, share who we are, people will feel more comfortable to see us. There's less anxiety about meeting a stranger in a strange place that you don't, conventions are a great idea. Tattoo artists that share very little of themselves on their Instagram page or whatever social media tend to not be as busy at a convention, because there's anxiety about meeting a stranger. Even if you've never met, if you've seen my face, you know my name, you've seen my work, there's already a certain level of comfort there, right? So it's marketing like any other marketing, but it's creating at least a bridge. I'm willing to meet you halfway. Here's all of me.
Here's my face.
If you want to come over, let's do that. Right?
I think too that there's, at least for me, like I was really nervous the first time I went into the first tattoo studio. Like you're sweating. It's intimidating. Tattooers can have this intimidating persona. And so I think like when people come in here, that is, dissolved fairly quickly. But even with how I think we, show ourselves on social media, it's like we're real humans. Like, you get to see my funny little face sometimes, and like, and it's fun, and it allows somebody to connect in a way without having barriers up. There's so many barriers that we have with one another, and labels and polarities and belief systems, and all of that kind of is diffused here. And so we really meet each person as themselves, completely welcome as they are, You know, there are people come in having a hard time, and all of them is welcome here. Not just like the shiny, glossy parts, but even if there's like ugly, terrible parts as well, like all of you is welcome here. So I think that's something that makes us brave to show our faces on social media sometimes. You know, we want people to feel like, hey, they're just like funny little goofballs too. And like, let's go check it out.
We're all art weirdos just having fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, you know, to just add to what you're saying there, there's a lot more things that we have in common than we think. I think the polarity online is certainly highlighting the things that are people, different viewpoints, and that are opposite. But within the opposite end of that game, there's a lot of Venn diagrams going on where we got overlap all over the place. You know, just even podcast before this one, keep going back to that, but we got chatting. I was like, hey, you know, sorry, I just got to pause for the noise thing going on here. And it turns out that they know the people selling my furnace used to do like the first website. Yeah, who would have thunk? You know, I had no idea. We met through a different circumstance. I mean, we live in a pretty tight-knit community in general, and we live in an oversized small town in many ways of the nature of how people operate in Winnipeg and in Manitoba in general. I think the same could be true for most of Western Canada. And then it only takes one person like John in Toronto to have moved away. And then all of a sudden you have a connection in a different community, you know, and then dragging full circle back to, they see John in Toronto with that tattoo. And then they're like, hey, where'd you get that done at? And they're like, hey, my buddy Shawn, you know, did that for me. And now people are seeking out, sir, you saw what I did there. Yeah. So we bring it back, you know, to this super unique.
Back to the web.
Back to the web.
When I first moved here in 2011, I was here and I had a gentleman that came in for a tattoo, and he had moved here from Ontario, and he was really nervous because he didn't know anyone. And he came and he saw me and I did his tattoo, and we're from the same town.
No way. We're
both born and raised in North Bay, Ontario. We both moved here relatively the same time, and then we connected here, and I've been tattooing him for a decade now.
Wow.
So you just never know who you're going to run into, who you're going to connect with, where and when.
Yeah, I told you, all Canada. It's like a big connected web of small town and connections that, you truly never know. You know, if folks want to continue to follow the journey outside of listening to the podcast today or witnessing the short, what's the best social media to follow you on or way to get connected if that's a website? But I know that you're heavy on social media right now. So what are those handles? We'll include them in the link below, but what are they online?
So you can reach out to us in many different ways. If you want to chat on the phone, you can call us. And that's at 204-284-1173. Instagram is at soulsurvivorsbodyart. And Facebook too, it's Soul Survivors Body Art.
And then
Shawn?
Directly for me, it's just Shawn, or it's Shawn Beatty Tattooer on Instagram, and that's probably the easiest way to get hold of me there.
Yeah. Awesome. No, that's fantastic. We'll include those links below after the episode and when this goes and get published. But thank you so much for making time to be on the episode today. It was fantastic.
Thanks, Steven.
I had a great time. I'm looking forward to meeting off screen and chatting and coming down. So I'll make a point to do that coming up here. And we'll definitely be chatting more about potential additions to my body. So I'm excited to chat more. Thanks so much again for being on today.
Thanks, Steven. Really appreciate connecting. That was fun. I'm glad we did this. We finally made it happen.
Yeah, me too.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
See you guys.